Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about something pretty serious in the video game industry space, something that's been brewing for a while now. If you've been paying attention, you might have noticed some troubling patterns in the gaming industry. Nintendo just announced that their upcoming Switch 2 titles will cost as much as $90 for physical copies, Microsoft is raising prices on consoles and accessories, and all of this is happening while AAA game studios are releasing some of the most broken rush titles we've ever seen. Now combine that with rising inflation, a strained economy, and a growing divide between consumers and corporations, and we have to ask a real question. Is the video game industry on the verge of a crash like we haven't seen since 1983? In this video, we're going to explore the warning signs, revisit what caused the infamous crash of '83, and ask whether the same fate could be looming just around the corner for the modern gaming industry. Now with that being said, it's important to say this. There are some amazing video games coming out in today's day and age. This video is really going to be talking about the companies that cut corners and have bloated, overinflated budgets for their products. I believe that these companies, for example, Ubisoft and even Sony to an extent, and maybe even Microsoft, might have one thing coming to them, right? This is not good for gaming. Raising prices like this is not good, and it's going to lead to an even more inflated market, and we could see a very catastrophic crash. It's not to say that there's bad video games coming out today. Like I said, there's some amazing ones, but this video is going to be mainly talking about, like I said before, the developers that cut corners and just misuse capital expenditure. To understand where we're going, we first need to understand where we've been. The video game crash of 1983 wasn't just a temporary slump, it was a full-on collapse. Practically overnight, the North American video game industry lost 97% of its market value. Let that sink in, 97%. So what went wrong? Back then, the industry was booming. Companies like Atari, Coleco, and Mattel were flooding the market with consoles. Everyone wanted a piece of the action, and there were very few quality controls. Developers were pumping out game after game without oversight. Anyone could make a cartridge and sell it in stores. The result? A tidal wave of garbage shovelware software. The most infamous example, E.T. the Extraterrestrial for the Atari 2600, a Rush tie-in meant to capitalize on the popularity of the movie. Developed in just over a month, it was so bad that thousands of unsold copies were literally buried in a New Mexico landfill. Consumers caught on. They were tired of spending money on overpriced junk. Trust eroded, games stopped selling, retailers slashed prices. Console markets lost lots of money, and just like that, the entire industry crashed. It wasn't until Nintendo stepped in with the NES in 1985 that the market began to recover, and even then, they had to rebrand it as an entertainment system to avoid the stigma of the word video game. It had developed a bad negative connotation around it just because it seemed like a massive, risk financially. Now, obviously, the video game industry is not what it was in 1983. There has been a ton of advancement to, push the video game industry forward. Video games have gotten way more technologically advanced, and they're just a different quality than what they were in 1983, right? The thing I want to highlight here is shovelware, okay? Shovelware is basically bloat, it's slop, okay? It's games that have no creativity or soul behind it, and they're just basically manufactured to get a quick buck, right? AI has, accelerated this issue super bad, okay? I don't know if you guys have paid any attention to like the PlayStation Marketplace, for example, on their digital storefront, but the AI shovelware is crazy. And shovelware is a different issue, but we see AAA developers all the time rush projects to get it out just to make a quick buck. It's really going to come back and bite a lot of companies here very soon because we are reaching this point. But that's the one comparison I want to highlight here from 2025 to 1983 is shovelware and just rushed gaming projects in general. Nintendo has officially announced that games for the next Switch will cost $80 digitally and up to $90 physically. Microsoft is raising prices on Xbox consoles, controllers, and accessories. Subscription services like Xbox Game Pass and PlayStation Plus have also crept up in cost. We're paying more than ever just to access the same experiences, sometimes even less, than we used to get. And while prices are rising, the quality is falling. Let's talk about some of the recent disasters. Cyberpunk 2077, while now mostly fixed, launched in an infamously broken state. Redfall was unplayable for many. The day before was pulled from Steam just days after release because it was basically a fake video game. Battlefield 2042, a technical mess that alienated longtime fans. What do these all have in common? Rushed development cycles, poor quality assurance, and a focus on pre-orders and marketing hype rather than delivering a polished final product. I could go on and on with games that fit this criteria that were released from 2020 to 2025. Those are just some examples off the top of my head. Gamers are tired and they're not staying quiet. Just like in 1983, we're watching trust erode in real time, and this is happening against the backdrop of an economy that's pushing more and more people to reconsider their spending. Inflation is up, wages are flat, essentials cost way more. For many, gaming is becoming a luxury again. It's not just about price, it's about value. If a game costs $90 and launch is broken, why would I risk my money, if I don't even, why would I risk my money here? Just in general, $90 is a lot of money. There's talks that GTA 6 will be $100. It's ridiculous, dude. No, I understand that there's a lot of effort and spending going on into these projects, but it gets to a point where it's just unaffordable for the consumer. Not saying that any of these games are going to be bad. I'm sure the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to have some fun games. I'm sure GTA 6 is going to be amazing, but dude, it's going to price a lot of people out, me included. Now that we've looked at what happened in 1983 and what's happening today, let's dive deeper into the eerie similarities because honestly, they're hard to ignore. Back in 1983, one of the major problems was oversaturation. There were too many consoles on the market, like I stated before. You had the Atari 2600, the Intellivision, and the ColecoVision, and a bunch of knockoffs. Each had its own games, accessories, and compatibility issues. It was confusing for consumers and exhausting for developers. Now fast forward to 2025, we've got the Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch, and soon the Switch 2. There's also the Steam Deck, PC gaming rigs, mobile games, cloud gaming services like GeForce Now and Xbox Cloud Gaming, plus retro mini consoles and VR platforms. It's overwhelming, and while competition can be a good thing in this case, it's fragmenting the player base and making game development more complex and expensive. Then there's the issue of quality. In 1983, stores were flooded with games that were barely functional. Now we're seeing the digital version of that. Major publishers are releasing broken, unfinished games and patching them later, if at all. Just look at how many titles have launched in quote-unquote early access or with massive day one patches that still don't fix all the bugs. Next is pricing. In the early 80s, game prices were creeping up while the quality was dropping. Sound familiar? Right now, Nintendo is charging $80 for digital games on the Switch 2 and $90 for physical copies. That's just a huge jump, especially in a time when people are already feeling financial pressures. Microsoft is also raising prices on its hardware and accessories. When you combine that with the rising cost of subscriptions, gaming is quickly becoming unaffordable for the average player. And just like in 1983, consumers are starting to push back. They're canceling pre-orders, they're review bombing games that launch in poor condition, they're turning to indie titles, emulators, and even piracy in some cases because they don't feel like they're getting their money's worth anymore. If you look at the big picture, the parallels are impossible to ignore. The video game industry is showing the same symptoms that led to the 1983 crash. Too many platforms, declining quality, rising prices, and most importantly, a growing disconnect between game publishers and the players that they rely on. So let's say things don't change, let's say this trend continues. What would a modern video game crash actually look like? Well, first of all, it wouldn't look exactly like 1983. We're not going to see physical games piled up in bargain bins or dumped into landfills. The industry is mostly digital now, but the collapse would be just as real, just quieter and harder to see all at once. A modern crash would look more like studio closures. We've already seen major layoffs at EA, Riot Games, Bungie, and other studios in the past year. A crash would accelerate that trend. Projects would be cancelled, big budget games would get shelved, riskier, more creative ideas would disappear in favor of quote-unquote safe sequels and live service models. We'd probably see fewer AAA releases overall. Publishers would pull back, releasing only a handful of major games each year, and many of those might still rely on microtransactions or battle passes to stay profitable. Gamers, in turn, would stop buying new consoles, they wait, they hesitate, they'd invest in a Steam Deck or a mid-tier gaming PC and spend their time playing indie games or revisiting old classics. They'd get their entertainment elsewhere on YouTube, on Twitch, or even outside of gaming entirely, which I know is crazy. Going outside? Nah, man. Anyways, and here's the real danger. The trust that's already fraying between developers and gamers, it could snap completely. That's what a crash looks like in 2025. It's not an explosion, it's a quiet, steady exodus. It's the slow fading of an audience that no longer believes they're being treated with respect. You could argue that this is already happening, all the time. Like this might be the case, right? Like the gaming industry might have already crashed. So with all of that said, is it too late? The short answer is no, but the window for change is closing fast. There are absolutely ways the industry can pull back from the edge, but it's going to require real, honest changes from people at the top. First, publishers need to rethink their pricing strategy. Not every game should cost $70, $80, or $90. There needs to be room for mid-sized games at lower prices. The premium games actually need to feel premium. If you're going to ask for that kind of money, the game better be finished, polished, and worth it. Second, the industry needs to slow down. Right now, developers are being pushed to the limit with unrealistic timelines and constant crunch. And what's the result? Burned out teams and half-finished products. If the studios want to regain trust, they need to take their time, delay a game if you have to, people will wait. Just make sure it is actually good when it launches. Third, transparency has to come back. No more hiding gameplay until launch, no more cinematic trailers that have nothing to do with the final product. If a game isn't ready, be honest about it. Players would rather hear the truth than getting blindsided by disappointment. Fourth, accessibility matters, not just in terms of gameplay, but financially. Make games that can run on older hardware, offer demos, let people try before they buy. Think about the players who don't have the budget for a high-end rig or every new console. And lastly, companies need to stop treating players like wallets. People see through the manipulative monetization tactics, the loot boxes, the pay-to-win systems, the NFTs, all of that garbage, all of that has to go. But trust first, profit will follow. It's not easy, but it is possible, and there are developers out there who are already doing it, okay? Like I said before, there are a ton of great games in today's day and age. I think the AA space is really going to take over in terms of profitability if it hasn't already. Here's the bottom line. The gaming industry is at a crossroads. One path leads to revival, more honest communication, better games, fair pricing, and a renewed relationship with the people who actually play the games. The other path, it leads straight to a crash. Maybe not as dramatic as 1983, but just as devastating. And if we're not careful, we'll look back at this time and wonder why nobody saw it coming. But we do see it coming, and lots of people are aware, and we still have time to change course. So what do you think? Are we heading for another crash? Are you already pulling back from AAA gaming as a whole? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. If you found this video insightful, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with your friends who care about the future of gaming. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and don't stop fighting for the games and the entertainment that we deserve.